Miller's Turnwheel, Divine Pulse, and the Dragon Time Crystals are mechanics that exist in the three most recent Fire Emblem games, which allow the player to turn back time and return to a previous action. These are often seen as just a convenience or a quality of life feature to help make the games more accessible, but they can actually be an incredibly powerful tool and massively impact the way in which you play. Welcome to a Fire Emblem talk, where I take a Fire Emblem mechanic or topic and we dive into it in a little more detail. Today, we will be looking at how rewind mechanics can be used as more than just a bailout for when you make a mistake, and accounted for proactively to allow for riskier or less reliable play. Before we start, I would like to thank the people who support me in making content like this and everything else on the channel by backing on Patreon. A link is in the description with more information on the benefits you can get for supporting from just £1 a month. If you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you wouldn't mind rating the video, it helps it find its way to more people, as does leaving a comment with any feedback you may have. When we think about the rewind mechanic, we all probably think of the same scenarios first. We either make a poor, badly thought out decision and rewind after realising our mistake, we misclick because despite our incredible skill as gamers, Fire Emblem's mechanics are simply too much for us, so we turn back the hands of time, or the RNG gods let you down and a spurt of bad luck forces a reset after missing a 94 display hit or catching an opponent's 2% crit. Now there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, those are all of course perfectly valid times to pulse. That being said, if the only time you are using these mechanics is when you make an error or get horrendously unlucky, then you are probably going to be ending the maps with rewinds left that you could have used to aid your progress throughout the battle, because whilst you may not have had any situations created by accident where turning back time would have helped you out, you likely could have taken more risks. This can massively alter the strategies available to you, the strengths of some units or abilities, and much more. You can afford to take risks that in other games would force you to restart an entire level if they didn't pay off. If you have a 65 hit on an enemy but face death if you miss, you can absolutely take that shot and just roll it back if you fail. In most games that attack is basically unclickable, but due to the power of rewind, it now becomes a perfectly viable hit, and can make dealing with a threat much easier, since you don't actually need a reliable way to take them out. You just need a solution that works one time, not a way that works consistently. Speaking of reliability, units and abilities that would otherwise be considered unreliable can be massively altered by this. Ulchrist from Fire Emblem Engage is a great example. When he promotes into his unique class, Tyria de Elite, and reaches level 5 in it, he gains access to the Luna ability, giving him a percent chance equivalent to his dexterity to ignore 50% of a target's defense and resistance. When combined with critical hits, this can give Ulchrist easy access to some very high damage numbers against enemies who would otherwise be a struggle to bring down. This is something which I've seen criticised as being unreliable, but how reliable do you actually need it to be when the consequence of failure is basically nothing? If it goes awry, you can simply burn a Dragon Time Crystal and try something else, and if it works, then great, you found an easy solution to eliminating a problem. If you are familiar with and understand how to burn random numbers, it doesn't even have to end there, because you can simply feed the random numbers where it doesn't work into a different action, and then take another crack at it. This can also work with abilities that you don't want to activate too. For example, Claude in Fire Emblem Three Houses is a unit who can thrive with low health builds. However, this can leave players reluctant to use combat arts with him, even when it may be beneficial to do so, as his minor Crest of Regan gives these attacks a 30% chance to heal him for 30% of the damage dealt, which can put him out of range of his low health abilities, such as Wrath and Vantage, destroying his enemy phase potential in the process. With Divine Pulse in play, however, you can freely take these attacks. Chances are his crest won't activate, but if that 30% chance does occur, you can simply Divine Pulse. This can allow a unit such as Claude to go from an enemy phase unit to a dual phaser, and can massively amp up his potential. Locations where he previously may have been unable to position due to the threat of an enemy Gambit user can now be occupied, with his player phase being used to kill the Gambit threat or lock them in place with Encloser, so they are unable to pose a threat to him. All you have to do to be able to maximise this usage is proactively plan around your Divine Pulse uses, and willingly enter situations where, if things go south, you just pulse out. Because of this, reliability begins to matter significantly less. The consequences for failure have now gone from potentially failing an entire map and having to start it all the way from scratch, to simply burning one of up to 10 charges of your rewind, all of which you lose at the end of the map anyway. There are a whole host of situations where playing like this can make your life so much easier, by being comfortable with using a rewind and playing into it. Divine Pulses are a tool for you to use, and whilst they can be used to bail you out of mistakes or bad luck, you probably shouldn't be expecting 10 instances of this on each map. There is a high likelihood that you can afford to use rewinds aggressively. A lot of these instances won't result in you having to turn back time either. If you swing a 70% hit, chances are it will land. The turn wheel is just there as a safety net in case it doesn't. A tool that is as powerful and has as much potential as the rewind mechanic is not one that should be hoarded away and saved in case of emergency, at least not in its entirety. Of course, reserving a few charges for when things go south is absolutely fair, especially if you are less familiar with the game at hand and you aren't sure what challenges could be around the corner. How many rewinds you feel safe with will obviously be entirely up to you and how comfortable you feel with the game and the scenario you are in. If the map you are playing has a boss with Miracle, for example, maybe keep a couple of extra pulses in the tank for when that decides to rear its head. It also probably goes without saying, but the later you are into a map, the more freely you can usually afford to risk pulses, since there are less chances for future mistakes or RNG to force your hand into needing one. Just remember that there is no penalty to using a rewind other than losing one charge of said rewind, of course. I think there is sometimes a conception that using a rewind directly correlates with having done something wrong or made a mistake, but this just isn't the case. Fire Emblem is a game where a lot of the time you will simply be playing to your odds, and even the best possible play for any given turn may not have a completely guaranteed success rate. Acknowledging that and having a strategy for the bad luck is absolutely part of playing effectively. And it just so happens that rewind mechanics are pretty much a catch-all solution to your well-laid plans being ruined by poor luck. And because of that, you can afford to put yourself in situations where bad luck is much more likely to happen when the upside is great enough. Not wanting to use time crystals out of a fear that you might need them later or there might be a better opportunity to get more out of them in the future is a similar case of hoarding that we see with countless tools and items throughout the series. And like with most of those, these tools are a lot better being used than, well, not. Whilst it sounds obvious on paper, the tools you have at your disposal help a lot more when you actually use them, rather than keeping them in your inventory. If you finish a map without using any rewinds, you don't get any additional rewards or benefits, and there is no real advantage to doing so. You really shouldn't be scared to put yourself in situations where you may have to pulse out if things go south, because that's kind of what they're there for. This is probably a topic for another video, but whilst I do love the inclusion of the rewind mechanic and hope it is a staple of the franchise moving forward, I do think it would be improved if there actually was some sort of reward based around the amount of pulses you had remaining at the end of a level. As it stands though, that is not the case, and Divine Pulse or its equivalent should be tools you are considering when planning out your turns, because it is absolutely one that can make a huge difference, and allow you to go for risky, unreliable plays that could make your time with the challenge in front of you much easier. These mechanics obviously do bring a lot of convenience to the games that they are in, but if you look for more opportunities to make use of them proactively, it can benefit you heavily, and they can be so much more than just a convenience tool. I think that about wraps up this video. Thank you all for watching. If you want to discuss this topic, anything else on the channel, or Fire Emblem in general, consider joining the Discord. Before you leave, if you wouldn't mind rating the video and subscribing to the channel if you would like to see more content like this, I would really appreciate it. Lastly, I would like to once again thank the people who support me in making content like this and everything else you see on the channel by backing on Patreon. It really does help out a lot and I do appreciate it. For more information on how you can back for just £1 a month and the benefits you get from doing so, check the link in the description. Thank you all again for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.